Hi, I'm Erin Maygood. I am founder of Kinderlaunch Consulting, former multi-unit operator of childcare centers, and current owner of a large childcare center. And I'm here to talk to you today about how to determine market viability for a preschool program. So there's a couple of different metrics that I like to look at when diving into market exploration. And I think it's important to focus on those metrics and really follow those indicators for where there is both growth and demand. Sometimes I see people go about this in the other way around, backwards. So they may decide that they really want to open a preschool. There's a place right down the road from them. They see the building, they can imagine it in their heads. It all looks perfect. But if the demand is not there, if the growth is not there, then it doesn't end up being a suitable option for you. And in the long run, if you're opening a preschool program, you're putting a lot of your time into it, you're putting a lot of your money, there is a lot of risk involved. So you really want to spend your time doing your homework and your research when you are assessing a market's viability. So when I'm assessing demand, two of the things that I look for are the young families, so the average age of a person in a particular area, as well as household income. There are two methods or two models of preschool programs that people target. One is private pay and one is substantially subsidy pay. Both of them can be great models. What I have experience in, or the most experience in, is private pay. So I factor in a certain level of household income that I like to look for. And when it comes to the average age in a particular area, I like to see somewhere around late 30s, maybe 40. And one of the ways that I get this information is by looking on LoopNet at demographics listed in different properties for sale or for lease listings. This is something that your commercial realtor could also help you find, but if you haven't really narrowed down a particular area yet and you're just doing a wide sweep of different markets, you can just look around on LoopNet, and many of those listings will provide you with some really great demographics, and they can be very specific to a particular region of a town or city. So for example, you might see just average income or average age of Denver, Colorado, for example, but that's such a wide region and it's going to have so many micro markets within it that it's not really giving you a very realistic picture of where you might want to go, for example, in that city. So by just picking some of those listings on LoopNet, taking a look at the demographics they have in their marketing materials, that will help to give you an idea of whether or not that area has young families that are within your financial target. So when you're trying to determine the level of growth in a particular area, you want to focus on a couple of things. And I think growth is important because you maybe are seeing that there's an area with some current demand, but if you aren't seeing continued growth, then your market may be on the downhill slope. So for example, you may look at a certain place and you can see that there's some demand there now, but if you aren't seeing continued growth, then you aren't constantly regenerating new young families. And you're always going to need new students entering your school after those graduate. So you don't want to be in an aging market that's running out of opportunities to bring in young families. Indicators of growth in a particular area are going to be new housing developments. So new housing, it definitely attracts young families. Young families love a new home. So definitely check that out. You can look in the news for indicators of housing developments on the plan. You can also look on the city's website. Often city planning departments will have information about major developments going on. Also, any sort of big business growth. So if you find out there's going to be a major tech hub or a large headquarter for a big company, that's really good news in terms of growth. If you have a new Amazon headquarter going down the street from the area you're looking at, you know that's going to be bringing a lot of cars and a lot of people every day. So I'll tell you a little bit about how I found the market for my current center. I actually focused on growth first, and then I went and looked at indicators for demand in terms of young families and income brackets. Perhaps I guess I maybe combined the approach a little bit, but I actually started looking on Zillow, and I used the filters to screen new homes and new homes over a certain price level. I can't remember what that price level was. Maybe it was over 700,000, something like that. And I was scrolling around on the map on Zillow and just looked for areas where I saw a lot of homes coming up. And so, you know, you run across that quite frequently, but some of those areas are already well established and some of them aren't. But I found a particular area where I saw a lot of building going on, a lot of new homes coming on the market in the price range I was looking for. And I would then go over to Google and do a comparison to find out what the competition was in the area. So that is our next big indicator in this market analysis. And I just did a quick search on a map of where there were other preschools, and I realized that in the area where I was looking, there were not very many established preschools where all these new homes were coming in. So just, you know, by doing that search, I found out, hey, this is something that I should research further. So after pinpointing an area that looked, we'll call it interesting at the time, I started doing a deep dive farther into assessing competition, assessing whether or not needs were being met by the current childcare centers. I see a lot of companies perhaps that maybe get really focused on things like current population or population density, and while that is helpful, I find that in a lot of markets with high populations right now, they already have a pretty established childcare network. And with that being said, there are so many areas that are still major childcare deserts, and it's finding those areas that are growing that don't have the childcare to keep up with the growth. So I would start off by just calling local centers and, you know, asking them what spaces they had available. Ask for, if you have, pretend, you know, that you have a younger child and you have an older child, and see, do they have space for a 2-year-old? Do they have space for a 4-year-old? Oftentimes, there are less spaces for younger students. Those ratios are lower, and so those programs are less cost effective. You just don't get as many spaces for the number of teachers you have, so those spaces are just going to be more limited. So you may find that there are a number of spaces for a 4-year-old in the particular area you're looking at, but not for a 2-year-old. So that's some helpful feedback, and perhaps that's an indicator that it may or may not have enough demand for what you're looking for. But if you are looking at an area and you determine that you're really not finding much in the way of spaces, no matter what age you're asking centers about, I think that is a solid indicator that you have a very viable market, and that's where you can continue to do your research, learn more about, you know, where the competition stands, where your market or your particular school would fit into that market. But that's how I found out that the area I was interested in ended up being a successful market for us to go into. Lastly, when determining market viability, I cannot stress enough how important it is for you to really spend time on that research, to really learn what's happening in the particular neighborhood that you're looking at, to reach out to schools multiple times per year to find out, you know, what their rates are, to find out what spaces they have available. Keep in mind that at different times of the year, schools will have different levels of enrollment. So they probably have their lowest enrollment generally in summer when some families take it off. And they're gonna have their highest level of enrollment in springtime. So you wanna know that in an area that you're considering putting your time and your money into, that the demand is sustained throughout the year. So spend your time doing that research. And then when you really feel strongly that you want to move on a particular area, that's when you start focusing on the exact location. And I will be putting together another video where I get into specifics of things that I looked for a particular location. So stay tuned.